Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and I expect this week's video to upset a lot fewer people, because this week I'm looking at the 2019 remake of the 1998 survival horror game Resident Evil 2. Development for the original Resident Evil 2 started a month after the first one's completion, with the director's chair being taken by Hideki Kamiya, while the original director, Shinji Mikami, stepped back and became the producer due to creative disagreements with Kamiya. The game was actually supposed to release in May of 1997, but the entire project was scrapped and restarted after Mikami believed the game they had created wasn't good enough. If only developers thought like that today. The original project has gone on to be known as Resident Evil 1.5, and shares a lot of the same basic plot structure we'll see later. The main differences were that the two lead characters never crossed paths, and that the female protagonist was named Elza Walker, instead of the much better name she would get in the official release. Soon afterwards, they would have to scrap the script as well, as supervisor Yoshiki Okamoto didn't like that Mikami intended RE2 to be the final game, which is hilarious in retrospect. No progress would be made until Okamoto brought in professional screenwriter Noboru Sugimura, who was easily able to solve all of the script problems. The game was also restructured after Kamiya wanted to go for a more Hollywood approach to attract new audiences. It would finally be released in January of 1998. Usually January releases that go through so many scrapping and restructuring phases are terrible, but the game was very well received. In fact, it is still the best-selling Resident Evil game for a single console, and often appears on lists of the best video games ever made. Fast forward to 2015, where, after years of suggestion from Kamiya, Capcom officially announced that they were remaking Resident Evil 2. Releasing in 2019, the game featured revamped character designs, gameplay, and graphics thanks to the RE engine first used in Resident Evil Biohazard, and a shift from forced camera perspectives to an over-the-shoulder view. This game would also be received very well, topping many best games of 2019 lists and being seen as a near perfect way to do a remake. But is all of that praise worth it? Yeah. Let's find out and give it everything we've got! The game opens on a shot of a burger that manages to look both delicious and disgusting. Schrodinger's burger here belongs to this truck driver, who is listening to a man on the radio talk about a woman with a rotting face that attacked him, and he responds exactly how you'd expect him to.
Sounds like my wife.
Since this trucker is a firm believer in gender equality, he runs over a woman with a rotting face standing in the middle of the road. Come on, didn't your parents ever tell you to look both ways before you cross the road? I'm very disappointed in you, zombie. Since the strength of zombies in this game is as consistent as Raw, she completely no-sells getting plowed by a goddamn 18-wheeler and probably bites our friend here. But hey, maybe he's into that kind of thing. Who am I to judge? This is where the story differs, as once again you are allowed to choose between two different characters. You've got rookie Raccoon City police officer who manages to rock a boy haircut and still be cool, and winner of the medal for worst first day on the job, Leon Scott Kennedy. And the equally as capable younger sister of one of Resident Evil 1's protagonists, with the biggest glow-up in gaming history thanks to her model being based on actual model Jordan McGowan, which I probably said wrong, but my attention is on other things right now, Claire Redfield! Since I left Redfield on red last game, I picked Claire in this one. This choice also leads to my least favorite part of this entire game. The two different story paths aren't unique. A lot of the story beats are repeated and they go through the same exact things, instead of them going through completely separate things at the same time. It's a pretty small complaint since you won't notice it if you play through the game once, but I wanted to mention it nonetheless. Back to the game, we join Claire as she rides her cool guy motorcycle into a Mizoil gas station. I guess times got hard for the A-lister, just outside Raccoon City. She talks to someone in a phone booth, this is the 90s after all, and then drops this line.
Why does everyone think I'm gonna get in trouble?
Oh, I don't know, did you see the welcome sign? It specifically tells you why you're going to get in trouble and who is responsible. And in our second instance of instant karma in the opening 10 minutes of this game, Claire hears a crash inside the gas station and, being a character in horror media, decides to investigate. After accidentally getting a man killed, the gas station is suddenly overrun by a gathering of zombies larger than any Biden rally, and Claire is rescued by everyone's favorite Backstreet Boy, Leon. The two drive off to safety towards Raccoon City. Oh, come on! Unsurprisingly, like 5 minutes after they enter the city, they are swarmed by infected and separated by a giant explosion after our trucker friend becomes our trucker matchstick. The two agree to reunite at the Raccoon City Police Department, which is the main area of this game. We're only 2 games in and they've already abandoned the resident in Resident Evil. I don't mind it, honestly. I like the RFPD way more than the Spencer Mansion. It has more unique locations, it's actually fun to explore, and it actually makes sense why there's a bunch of guns and ammunition just strewn about everywhere. Just like Resident Evil 1, inventory management is a large factor in how you play the game. Health can be restored with herbs and first aid spray. You have safe rooms with chests to store items you no longer or don't yet need, and you have to be smart and conservative with your ammo or else you'll quickly find yourself roaming these halls with a much different purpose. After failing to save yet another police officer, Claire meets up with the injured Lieutenant Marvin Branagh, who tells Claire about a secret passageway to the parking garage under the main statue. But in order to get down there, you have to collect 3 medallions because of course you fucking do. Every building in this universe was built by MadMod. Just like RE1, this section of the game is mostly just exploring the building, solving puzzles, getting keys, and finding medallions. Eventually, Marvin contacts you and asks that you return to him. Upon doing so, he reveals that Leon has finally arrived at the PD and is currently outside the gate. Jesus, Leon, what took you so long? We got here in like 3 minutes. The two reunite outside and choose just the worst possible moment to flirt with each other before they're separated once again, and Claire fights her way back through the building. Shortly after this, you encounter the second most terrifying creature in this entire game. The Lickers. They live in a constant state of big brain time. In fact, their brain is so big that it took over their eyes so they can't see. Whenever you're around a Licker, you either have to proceed very slowly and quietly, or full sprint in the complete opposite direction, which is what I recommend. After this encounter, they will show up basically everywhere you don't want them to be, and they aren't weak either. They're bullet sponges, and if they notice you, they'll shriek and pounce after you. Basically, they're the unholy love child of the smoker, hunter, and witch from Left 4 Dead. And they're the second scariest thing in this game. We haven't even met number 1 yet, though anyone who has played this game knows exactly what I'm talking about. The third and final medallion is found soon after this, and you progress into the secret path and into the RPD Underground, which is not the name of a cool club, it's just machinery. But that's still pretty coggers if you ask me. Oh, why do I speak words? This is where Claire encounters Sherry Birkin, this scared little girl using the exact same strategy I use in every horror game. Claire's attacked by this mutated science guy with an eyeball on his arm, and a really easy boss fight ensues, ending with him falling down a pit. I guess he wasn't looking over his shoulder. As they make their way to the parking garage, Sherry Birkin tells Claire that both her parents worked for Umbrella, but both are now dead. Well, better dead than infected virus demons, I guess. Their escape from the RPD into the city, which doesn't sound any safer, is interrupted by Police Chief Brian Irons, who is just as nice as he appears. The next section of the game is Claire venturing back into the RPD through the chief's office in an effort to rescue Sherry. You learn that Irons was protecting work Umbrella was doing in the sewers and eventually end up on the roof. It's at this point that the game kinda stopped being scary. The regular zombies are slow and easy to handle, and the Lickers aren't too bad to deal with as long as— there he is. This is the introduction to T00, also known as Mr. X. From this moment on, no joke, Mr. X will stalk you throughout the entire rest of the game. He can't be killed, so your only option is to run. Since he's a big boy, his footsteps are very loud and will let you know when he's close by. I loved and hated this. I hated having to play through it because it was goddamn terrifying, but that's also why I loved it. I've played horror games where I'm being stalked by something, but never has it felt this real. There's a constant feeling of tension as you know he's somewhere in the building and he's rarely ever far away. There are a few annoying instances where he'll happen to be right where you need to go though. Eventually you are able to retrieve a key card from Chief Irons' office, but not before he gives you a little ring.
You rang?
He alludes to the importance of Sherry's dropped necklace, and then suddenly we're playing as Sherry Birkin. Oh great! Cause that's what I needed, a defenseless little child in a horror game. As Sherry, your goal is to escape the orphanage. You try to retrieve the front door key, but Irons catches you. Sherry pulls a Don Maroney and throws acid in Irons' face, acid that happens to be on the same table as a beautiful woman that I would totally fawn over if it wasn't for the whole, being dead thing. The woman on that table is actually important. She's the mayor's daughter, Catherine Warren, and was left behind when the outbreak started because 99% of Raccoon City's population deserved to be turned into hideous virus zombies. She was under Irons' protection for a while before he killed her and planned to taxidermy her body. She's also featured in one of the Ghost Survivors DLC stories that looks at people who died during the outbreak and shows what would have happened if they lived. The other stories follow gun store owner Robert Kendo, who is important in Leon's story, Sheriff Daniel Cortini, that guy you got killed at the beginning, and Umbrella Alpha Team Soldier Ghost. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, Sherry running and hiding from her Mr. X, an old fat man, just as terrifying. After evading him and receiving the front door key, Irons catches her again, but is force-fed a slug by a mutated shoulder guy, which sounds worse than death. We're then sent 30 minutes into the past to see what Claire got up to while Sherry was playing a high-stakes game of hide and seek. Claire was fighting through the streets of Raccoon City and a heaping helping of demon doggies on her way to the orphanage, which is the closest thing to a residence this game has to offer. Claire finds Brian, who gets chest bursted before he can live his new life as Harvey Dent, and reunites with Sherry. The two share a happy happy moment, and oh god damn it, why? The chase with Mr. X ends with our heroes taking shelter in an elevator. Wouldn't be my first choice, and being saved from death by this giant mutant man who Sherry calls Daddy. Let's just hope she never has to bring him to school. Giant mutant Daddy jumps on the elevator and sends it crashing down. Sherry somehow recovers before Claire and is taken away by this woman because they aren't allowed to be together for more than 10 minutes. The woman reveals that her name is Annette, the demon daddy is named William, and they are Sherry's parents, so Sherry's a goddamn liar. Down deeper in the sewers, the name of this game is exploring all the different offshoots to find chess pieces for the most needlessly complex security system I have ever seen. Upon doing so, Claire is once again attacked by William Birkin, leading to the most annoying fight in the game. You are stuck on this small platform with this dude who takes up like 25% of it at any given time and can attack you from basically anywhere, and you have to continually send a large container back and forth to knock him off the platform, but you have to make sure he's in just the right position to get hit and that you're clear of said area, and he rarely stays in one spot for long. If you manage to beat that fight before smashing your entire setup, you'll find an infected Sherry and be told that there isn't much time to save her. This brings us to the final area in the game, Nest. Umbrella's underground laboratory where they experimented with the G virus, and just like at Spencer Mansion, said virus infected the staff and eventually broke out on the surface. Claire digivolves into her final girl form by giving Sherry her jacket and sets out to explore the lab. And by explore, I of course mean run around solving a series of puzzles just to accomplish a simple task. Claire has to upgrade the clearance on her wristband she took from Sherry, which involves synthesizing a serum to destroy plants in a greenhouse guarded by more poison ivy plant monsters, because why not? Along the way, Claire finds a tape from Umbrella's Alpha team that was sent in to retrieve the G virus and William Birkin. However, one soldier shot and killed Birkin, said soldier being Ghost. Claire then finds the medicine for Sherry, but her return is interrupted by a family reunion. Annette weakens mutant William, and Claire has one final showdown with him that is exceptionally easier than the other one. Successfully terminating this Terminator and healing Sherry carries us into the final sprint of the game as a self-destruct sequence activates and an actual timer begins to count down as you make your escape. You find a train car and plan. Hey, if Sherry can lie, then so can I. Any timed boss fight immediately sends my stress levels through the roof, but this one isn't too hard as you're provided with a super powered gun and you should have plenty of extra ammo left over for your other guns if you played it smart. Beating Birkin's bioweapon bitch ass brings us to the game's end as the train departs with Claire, Sherry, and Leon. There's also a secret final boss if you play through the game a second time as the other character, and a bonus scene that implies that Leon and Claire adopt Sherry despite the fact that they all met last night. Video game logic, gotta love it. And the award for quickest turnaround and quality goes to this game. Pretty much everything about this game works. Leon and Claire are incredibly likable characters that manage to have infinitely more chemistry than Chris and Jill despite rarely being seen together throughout the game. The switch to an over-the-shoulder view and a more modern control scheme were obvious yet amazing improvements that added to the experience as the horror conveyed through the forced camera angles was replaced with effective use of lighting, corners, and shadows that are all way more terrifying. All of the areas are interesting in their own way, though the constant backtracking and 12-step puzzles to do a simple task can get annoying. This is also one of the best looking games I have ever played. Every inch looks polished and realistic, which plays a huge role in Claire and Leon's likability. They look, act, and move like real people, so they feel like real people. Unlike RE1, this game never forgets it's supposed to be a zombie game, and introduces new variants of infected instead of using random animals, although there is a giant killer alligator at one point. Like the first, a lot of the story is conveyed through notes scattered throughout the game, but there are a lot more cutscenes and characters, and the inclusion of Sherry and the Birkins gives us a personal reason to care more than we would have without them. Resident Evil 2 gets a solid 7.5 out of 10. While I haven't done a playthrough from Leon's perspective yet, I do plan on it eventually. But Resident Evil's tenure at this residence that is this channel has temporarily expired, so next time we ride the walls in the name of journalistic integrity. I hope to see you there.